Welcome to The Explainer. So, let's talk about a huge shift, a real game changer happening in software engineering. How on earth do you measure the true impact of AI when it's writing more and more of our code? We're going to see how the conversation is moving away from this old idea of developer productivity to something much bigger, something called engineering intelligence.
All right, let's just dive right in. The central question, the one every single tech leader is wrestling with right now, is this. Is AI totally breaking how we measure engineering work? I mean, for decades we had a playbook, right? But suddenly that playbook feels, well, completely out of date.
For the longest time, we leaned on these simple, maybe even flawed metrics, like lines of code. It was something you could count, right? A tangible number. But now, in this new reality, AI tools, think Copilot, are generating a massive chunk of that code. So if a developer writes 10,000 lines of code, what does that even mean anymore? It's like the ruler we were using to measure things is just broken.
Now look, this isn't some in-the-future kind of thing. It's happening right now. At places like Google, we're talking about roughly 30% of all new code being suggested or just straight-up generated by AI. This creates this huge paradox, doesn't it? The activity might look like it's going through the roof, but are we actually getting any more effective? That's the core question, and it's why we need a whole new framework to even begin to answer it.
Okay, so if the old way is dead, what's the new way? Well, that brings us to what we're calling the modern measurement stack. Think of it as a brand new toolkit built specifically for this new age of AI-powered development.
So how are the top tech companies handling this? Well, they're starting with a philosophy, a really holistic one called the SPACE framework. And the big idea here is to stop obsessing over just one single metric. Instead, you measure what actually matters across 5 key areas. That's satisfaction for developers, performance for the business, raw activity, team collaboration, and finally, efficiency in the workflow. It's all about getting that complete, balanced picture.
All right, so layer one, the most basic starting point is just, are you developers even using the expensive AI tools you're paying for? It's that simple. You got to track things like the AI usage rate. How many suggestions are they actually accepting, and what percentage of the code that gets shipped was AI generated? You really have to start there.
Okay, so once you know people are actually using the tools, the next layer asks a really critical question. Is this stuff actually making the whole development process faster? So here, we start looking at those classic DevOps metrics, things like lead time for changes, which is just how long it takes for a commit to make it all the way to production, or the cycle time for a pull request. See, we're measuring the flow of work, not just how fast someone is typing.
But, and this is a huge but, speed is totally meaningless. Actually, it's worse than meaningless. It's dangerous if your quality takes a nosedive. So the next layer has to be a set of critical countermetrics. You absolutely have to track things like the change failure rate, the bug density, and how often you're having to roll back code. This is your safety net to make sure you're not just shipping bugs faster.
And this quote just nails it. It captures the core risk perfectly. Without this, AI might produce more code, but worse systems. I mean, think about that. If you only optimize for speed, you can drive your whole operation right off a cliff. Quality, it just has to be non-negotiable.
And last, but definitely not least, we have to measure the human element. We're talking about developer experience or DevX. Is AI actually making life better for the people writing the code? So we look at things like developer satisfaction surveys. Are they getting more of that precious, uninterrupted flow state time? And is their overall cognitive load going down? Because at the end of the day, a happy, focused developer is an effective developer. It's that simple.
Okay, so when you take all of this data, all these different layers, and you put it all together, something really surprising emerges. A truth about where the real value of AI actually comes from.
And that leads us to the million-dollar question. Where do the biggest gains really come from? Now, if you ask most people, they'd probably say, oh, it's about writing code faster. But the data, the actual data from the big tech companies, points to a very different and frankly, a much more interesting answer.
It turns out the biggest wins, the most significant gains, aren't in generating new code at all. They're in accelerating all the work that happens around the code. I'm talking about things like faster debugging, getting documentation instantly, onboarding new engineers at a ridiculously fast pace, speeding up code reviews, and pulling knowledge out of a massive, complex code base. That right there, that's where the real magic is happening.
And this next part really shows you why. Check this out. Studies show that developers spend only about 16% of their time actually writing brand new code. Just 16%. The huge majority of their day is spent on all that other stuff we just talked about. So it's pretty clear, right? Optimizing that other 84%, that's where the massive leverage is.
And once you see that, it leads to this really profound shift in how you think about everything. It forces you to realize that the goal, it can't just be developer productivity. That's thinking way too small.
No, the real goal is engineering system optimization. You have to zoom out. Stop focusing on the individual developer and start looking at the entire system they operate in. The tools, the processes, the way they communicate, the whole shebang.
And this new focus, this new way of thinking, it has a name: engineering intelligence. And it's all about this massive shift to a system-level view of what performance even means.
So what is engineering intelligence really? Well, think of it as the practice of analyzing your entire software delivery system, from the moment an idea is born to the moment it's in a customer's hands. You're hunting for bottlenecks, and you're measuring the flow of actual business value, not just how busy your developers look. It's the difference between asking, "Are our developers busy?" and asking, "How effectively is our system delivering value?" Two totally different questions.
Here's a fantastic analogy for you. Engineering intelligence is observability for the software development process. It's kind of like Datadog or Splunk, but instead of pointing it at your production servers to see if they're healthy, you're pointing it at your entire engineering workflow to see if it's healthy and performing well. So let's just boil it down. The crucial point is this fundamental shift in mindset. In the old world, we measured individual developers. We counted their activity, we obsessed over coding speed. But in this new world, the world of engineering intelligence, we measure the system, we measure outcomes, and we optimize for the flow of delivery. It's a complete 180. Okay, so let's tie all this together and talk about why this isn't just an engineering conversation. Why does this matter to the C-suite? Why does this matter to the bottom line? Think about it. For most modern tech companies, what's the single biggest cost center? It's the engineering org. A 1,000-person engineering team that can easily cost a company $200 million a year. That is a massive, massive investment. And that is why this all matters so much. If you can get just a 10% improvement in the efficiency of that whole system, we're not talking about saving a little money here and there. We are talking about unlocking $20 million in value every single year. That's not just some small tactical win. That is a huge strategic advantage that can separate the winners from the losers in a market. So it really all comes down to one final critical question. A question that I think will define the engineering organizations of the future and separate them from those stuck in the past. Are you still measuring your people, or have you finally started measuring your system?